Okay, got it fixed now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just.
It's 19 hours.
Namaskar. Hello and welcome to this second edition of Mantras of Management and In Depth with Maharishis of Management. This is a series we started last Monday, and Sudhir Agrawal sir was gracious enough to come over as the lead anchor of this entire series, where we intend to know the futuristic, the emerging frontiers of management from some of the leading Maharishis of the entire discipline. And as Sudhir sir in the inaugural edition, he enunciated from his lifelong practitioners learning as to what really constitutes the art and science of management. So today we are really endowed, we are really privileged to have our first guest, I would say another Maharishi of management, as we would like to call them. And he joins us from the lovely land of Malaysia. And we have got with us Sir Lalit Gupta. I would like to just give a brief introduction. His LinkedIn profile is on front of me, and this is one of the managerial practitioners managerial lesson, that just go to the LinkedIn profile and get to know about the persona and the intertwined aspects of that great personality. You can just get it from there. So Lalit sir happens to be a corporate leader and a startups mentor. He's the co-founder of Edduus. If I'm spelling properly, sir would correct me. And it's an education platform that is architected to transform and redefine the global education system. The platform delivers the world's first intelligent micro education system by leveraging the new age technologies like AI, blockchain, and live streaming. Lalit sir is also the co-founder of ZIIL, a first of its kind application aimed at reducing stress and anxiety of its users. So quite very pertinent platform. It uses gamification to instill habits that are scientifically proven to reduce stress and anxiety into a user's day-to-day life. Lalit sir has over 3 decades of extensive business leadership experience across countries in Asia Pacific and Japan. So the look east, act east. So he comes to the east of India. So that's one of the unique uh, paradigms he brings to today's session. And he has also led a number of large-scale technology-led business transformations. He has also delivered keynote addresses on new technology innovations around big data analytics, social cloud, and mobility. And in his last role, Lalit sir was the CMO at iCliff Leadership and Governance Center. He's also a leadership coach and faculty for leadership development programs. He has spoken at numerous regional and global conferences on leadership. He focuses on how leadership and management practices need a change in today's fast changing world of digitization, connectivity, and disruption. So this was a brief but very, I would say, very pertinent, I would say, brief about Lalit sir. And I would now request Sudhir Agarwal sir to introduce Lalit sir from his engagement perspective, and that's where, and on what aspects Lalit sir would be talking. And I present the entire munch to Sudhir sir. The conversation between the two Maharishis ensue. So I would just take a leave from here and let the discourse emanate. Sir, please.
Thanks, Raghav. Thank you very much. And I hope you will stay with us on the while we are conversing.
As I said, that I will be learning from these two Maharishis and their conversations, and probably for lesser mortals like us, if something is going, so I will just come in and ask for a bit of a clarification, like a classroom. So that would be my role, sir. Please, over to you.
Thank you, Raghav. And you know, my association with Lalit goes quite a while. I actually look at Lalit always, my own personal and my professional mentor. For simple reason, because Lalit really has helped me understood the basic concepts in a basic simple manner. Otherwise normally people have a tendency to go around the world and tell you simple concepts, but Lalit does it other way around. He takes no time, he uses minimum words, and he's able to get me out of those situations. So that's why for me he's always like Guruji. So thanks, Raghav, for creating this platform for us, for me to speak to Lalit today. So welcome, Lalit, and thank you very much for joining us today, Lalit.
Thank you, Sudhir and Raghav, for this opportunity. It's a real privilege and honor to be with you guys, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. So Lalit, today, if we really see, what we are trying to talk here on this platform, the management, the leadership, this has all changed over years, and for very natural reason. And one of the reasons we understand is, the disruptions which are happening all around us. And if you notice that, most of these disruptions are traditionally last 1.5 or 2 decades have been more technology led. But I think COVID has brought a very new, angle and new dimension to that, where it has caused another level of disruption, a new kind of disruption. What people say that, what could not happen maybe in a decade has happened in a year because of, COVID change, because it was forced upon us. And in today's time, in the world of disruption, I think the only thing which is known is unknown. The only thing which is, we can say, is certain is uncertainty. And it is all facets of our life. It is not about professional life. It is not about personal life, social life. It is all over happening across age group. So when, so much is happening to us around us, and again, then we, go into a debate about management and leadership. So we would like to understand from you, Lalit, how would you like to decode this? The life which is full of crises, full of challenges, and we still have to live. Like COVID has made everybody understood that whether you are there or not, but the world will not stop. So at this point, if I stop, Lalit, how would you like to take us through some of your thoughts, some of your understanding, and also guidance for some of us to go through the journey as we travel. Lalit, all yours.
Yeah. So there, I think it's a very, very pertinent topic. I think right now, the kind of changes that we are going through, I would say that we are living in very, very strange times, right? Everything and everyone is totally connected, right? And this connectivity and emerging technologies are disrupting traditional business models, traditional social models, traditional economic models, etc. Right? And when there's so much of changes that are happening today, how can we assume that the leadership is going to remain the same, right? So my take on this is we talk about digital transformation, right? Some call it digital era, some call it open source era, some call it industrial revolution 4.0. But the fact of the matter is that most of this transformation is driven by technology, right? Now, in this digital transformation, there are two parts to this transformation. One is the technology part, which I think most of the businesses or most of the companies have got it right. I mean, they are, using technology, using new types of technologies to go forth and changing business models, etc. The second part of this digital transformation is the human part, the leadership part. And that is the part that I believe has been ignored or neglected, right? So it is almost like, you have a bullet car driver and you're asking him to drive or fly a spacecraft, right? And you're saying that there's a crisis of driving. No, it is not a crisis of leadership. It is leadership needs to change. It needs to keep pace with what the things are. Today, the businesses that existed, let's say 10, 20 years ago, they don't exist today anymore, right? So anything that made us successful, the things that we did that made us successful, let's say 5, 10 years ago, are no longer going to be good enough, right? So things today have changed. Like you were talking about, only thing certain is uncertainty, right? Now, we are living in a linear world of time and space dimensions, right? But we are surrounded by changes which are exponential in nature. I call it like we are surrounded by hockey sticks. How do you deal with that? We are not used to dealing with it. So that requires a total change of mindset, a total change of the way you look at things, right? So the businesses have changed, the business models have changed, the workforce has changed, right? According to some statistic, 40% of the workforce in US is already free agents or gig economy or gig workers or whatever you want to call it, right? We are facing intergenerational workforce. We have workforce which contains millennials to the senior people, et cetera, et cetera. People like you and I are still in workforce, right? So the whole, you're dealing with many generations of workforce today, right? So the leadership needs to change in accordance with all these changes. And I don't believe that people are taking that into account. And that's the reason why I think we have a lot of these situations.
Great, great, Lalit. Lalit, also, I think when the way COVID came, it just, landed and it shook the whole world. So some of your thoughts that how, because this was a time nobody had even thought of. And it is said often that it has caused and impacted if more than if there was a third world war.
Mhm.
Now, in these situations, how do you see our leadership, whether globally and some context to India, has really stood up and responded? I will not say react, has responded or it has actually reacted. Lalit.
Mhm. Yeah. No, so, it requires a monumental change, right? So to say that leadership has not responded to the challenge, that would be true to an extent, right? And it is a big change because it requires a huge change of mindset. Right? See, in today's situation, if you look at it, the word today is very different from what it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? Now, the word in the next 5, 10, 20 years ago, from now, is going to be very, very different from what it is today, right?
Mhm.
Now, the word that is going to be in 10 or 20 years, in 10 or 20 years time, who's going to define what that word is going to look like? It is the leaders of today.
Mhm.
And we need to figure out what that word is going to be. If you're still going to be determined by changes that happened, let's say 5, 10 years ago, that is not going to be enough, right? So we need to. So I call this as an era of possibilities, because things that are 10 years from now, I don't believe that they exist today. According to one statistics, 80% of the jobs in 2030 have not been invented yet.
Mhm.
So you're talking about new possibilities, you're talking about new opportunities. So you need a mindset, right? That is about creating something new. How do you create, for example, a culture of innovation? Okay. How do you create, and what COVID has done is, in my view, COVID has just accelerated some of those changes, right? And it has thrown some of these problems in the face of people to say, deal with it, guys. Come on. Now, this is the change, something that would have happened over the next 5, 10 years time. It has happened in 1 or 2 years. So the question is, how do you deal with that? So let me take just one small aspect of it, right? So one aspect is that all the organizations need to be more innovative. Right now, innovation, we may argue, that was always important, right? It was important 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but not as important as it is today. It is a matter of survival. If you don't innovate, you die. So you need to come up with a new S curve every whatever number of years, right? Now, how do you create a culture of innovation in an organization, right? In my view, on a personal perspective, it is about compassion and forgiveness. How do you create a culture of compassion and forgiveness in the organization? Forgiveness, because innovation is all about taking risks. When you take risks, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail at times. So you need to be able to forgive the genuine effort which may fail over time. So gone are the days of 10 or 20 years ago when the management would stand up and say, we are a zero tolerant company. It won't work today. You need to get people to try new things, to take risks, explore, experiment, make mistakes, and then move on from there. So it's about learning and growing at a personal level as well as at the organizational level. And when I say compassion, compassion is about understanding the problems around you, how the other people are feeling. You need to understand where the problems are, and that is where the innovation takes place. So innovation is actually about forgiveness and compassion, and that is what the leaders need to figure out how to deal with that. Today, with the changes that we are seeing in the world, in the business world, the disruption and the speed of change, etc., people think that the way to deal with this fast changing world is to keep on running fast. Whereas my theory is totally the opposite. I think people need to slow down. In fact, they need to stop. They need to create a pause. They need to take step back from the situation, understand what's going on, and then create a response rather than reacting to a situation. Most of the time, we are working endlessly. We are, busier than we have ever been, right? Uh, uh, although, if you look at it in today's time, things are more efficient today than, let's say, 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 15 years ago, because that's what technology does, right? It makes everything more efficient. And we have more tools for time management today, but that doesn't mean that we have more times at our hands. We are rushing through things, right? We are busy as hell. So the idea is that you cannot deal with this fast changing world by trying to just increasing the speed on the treadmill that you're running on. You need to stop the treadmill, get off the treadmill, assess the situation, figure out what you need to do, and then move on. So people need to slow down to take care of this fast changing world.
Great, great, Lalit. So, Lalit, in today's time, if we look at, as a word of wisdom from you for current generation, what would be, your mantra to them from a leadership mindset, because you mentioned that from a leadership mindset perspective?
So that, the number of things that the youth of today need to take into account. So, today we call it the word is full of uncertainty, of changes, of disruption. Now, this uncertainty has two sides to it. On one side, an uncertainty gives rise to opportunities and possibilities, right? That is, if you look at that uncertainty with a positive frame of mind. The other side of the uncertainty is stress, anxiety, and whole lot of depression. That is what a lot of youth are getting into. So the question is, how do you deal with this in a positive way? So one way to look at it is that I think, so there are quite a few traits that I think youth needs to develop to be able to deal with this on an ongoing basis. And one of the key ones, and I mentioned it a little earlier as well, is learning and growing. You need to be curious. Lifelong learning was always required. Not as much required as it is today, because everything that you know will be obsolete in 5-10 years time. So the good news is that the youth that comes into the market today to work in an industry, to work in a business, right? They are learning and everybody else is learning as well, right? The advantage that they have is that they don't carry the baggage that a lot of us will carry with us. So the idea is, one of the traits that I believe that youth need to carry with them is to be curious, to be willing to experiment, to be willing to explore, to be able to try new things, to be able to take risks. Failure is something that they need to think about as something that is absolutely essential for them to learn and grow. And learning and growing is the only thing that one can do in today's environment for them to be able to be successful.
Perfect, perfect. Raghav?
I think Sir has really given away the distinctive mantra over here. And sir, I would like to have a further elaboration when you said that leadership is all about compassion, about empathy. How it manifests, because this is very, very important. And I would like you to further elaborate upon it, because at times we feel leadership is all about getting ourselves projected all across. We are the ones who have to run the fastest, but then we have to take the whole group along, and giving up, if you have to have a knife and cut down on things. So how this disruption, as you said, technological adoption has to be in a more humane frontier. We have to give time to people to accommodate with this disruption rather than a all of a sudden change. So please, this one.
Excellent question. So, see, one of the management theories of, let's say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago used to be that you have to set stretch goals for your employees, right, to get the high performance, right? And if you want to get high productivity out of your people, you need to control them closely, right? I believe that we need to move away from that theory. Okay, we need to, in fact, move away from control and move into freedom, giving people freedom.
Okay.
I was earlier talking about, how the free agents, right, or the gig workers, right? So, for example, an Uber driver is a gig worker, right? Now he decides how much he wants to drive and how much he doesn't want to drive. Right? He knows very well that the more he drives, the more he earns, right? Now, he may decide that on Friday, it is my wife's birthday, so he'll take 2 hours off during the daytime and take his wife for lunch for her birthday, right? But he knows very well that he'll have to drive 2 extra hours in the evening to make up for that. Okay. Nobody has to tell him that, right? Nobody has to control him, right? Now, if let's say 30 to 40% of the working population is gig worker, right? Who has the kind of freedom that I just described, okay, can you continue to treat your employees the way you did, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago? You cannot. You got to give them more freedom. And if you look at the new age technology organizations like Google, Facebook, etc., they give that kind of freedom to their people.
Mhm.
You have freedom to do how much and when you want to work, but your compensation will also be determined based on that. Now, this is a very different paradigm, right?
Mhm.
You talk to a leader who was successful 10 years ago, he will say, this is bullshit. There is no way it's going to work.
Mhm.
In my view, this is the only way that leadership can survive in the coming time, because people have freedom, people value freedom, and they have choices, right? So if your organization is going to stay behind in that, then people are going to leave. They'll move to the other industries and other businesses where they will get the kind of freedom.
Mhm. So I think you have really transformed the entire narrative from a fear to fascination. The disruption which was being seen as that it is so very detrimental to the last mile of the workers. You are actually positing that this new paradigm is empowering the bottom of the pyramid. Like it was the fortune at the bottom of pyramid. Now you are saying now it is freedom at the bottom of the pyramid. The CK Pralad's that major motive. So one thought which people, because things are progressing so very fast that it is very difficult to take charge over things. So do you think that every level or every kind of an organization can re-engineer itself into this new paradigm? Is it possible? Because human needs would remain the same, only the scale and speed of it has changed. And as you
Yeah,
said, that
yeah,
go slow, take a pause to
yeah.
restructure. So
Mhm.
my question is like, if it is the MSMEs, or because India is such a vast country, we have such a diverse population. So what is the overall blueprint you see coming over? Yeah.
Yeah. It's an excellent question, Raghav. So, you've hit the nail on the head, because see, when we talk about giving freedom to the employees, it needs to be within a certain framework of that particular business, right? So, for example, if you say flexi time, right? Now, if you are a nurse in a hospital and you're taking care of an ICU patient, right? You can't decide when you want to work or you don't want to work. Okay, you may be able to exchange your shift with another nurse, but you can't say that I'm not going to take care of this patient because I want to take some free time, right? But lots of jobs it is possible, right? And the COVID pandemic has shown us that actually people can do flexi time. Not just that, people can actually work from home for 80-90% of their jobs, right? So in terms of this, when we talk about this freedom, right, if it is a continuum, right, there are certain new age companies which are on the other end where they give full flexibility. You do when and how much, etc., that you want to work. There will be some very strict businesses like, let's say, manufacturing. Okay, so let's say you're on a production floor. It is difficult to give the kind of flexibility, right? But rest of the business will fall somewhere in between. But the point here is that leadership needs to start thinking about how to offer more freedom to the employees in terms of vacations, in terms of sick leaves, in terms of one of the startups that I'm working on was on stress and anxiety. Now that is one of the biggest issues today that people are facing in life. WHO has declared stress as the epidemic of 21st century. It is at an all-time high. And I mean, we conducted a survey of about 20 global organizations. And what came out was that a lot of the large organizations, they are now discussing this as an issue at the senior leadership levels. And they're putting aside budgets to address it. So they are considering stress and anxiety as an organizational issue rather than as an individual issue. And they're putting aside budgets to handle that. That is another way of looking at how leadership needs to change, because if you know that 10 years ago, let's say if an employee came to his manager, right, and said, listen, I'm stressed out. And the manager will say, welcome to the club, my friend. Do you think I'm not stressed out? You see, but now, all the leaders and managers in all the organization, they are getting the training that they need to be sensitive to this issue, because it is required. If you don't handle stress and anxiety of your employees at an organizational level, it has an impact on productivity, on employee engagement, and long-term resilience and survival of the company. So there are things that we didn't care about, let's say 5-10 years ago. Now it is becoming a top of the agenda for the leadership.
Great, sir. Great. So, just one last question, supplementary to this further. See, the Fortune 500 corporations or the top of the league ones who are really leading the futuristic narrative, obviously, they would understand what all is there in the future and they will cope themselves up. From a national governance perspective, when India has set out such a ambitious plan and projection, somewhere or the other, the focus is probably on the technological frontier. But what I can gather from your mantras, your insights into what is going to come, the bigger challenge is on the leadership frontier. So, do you somewhere envisage that we probably need a national mission for leadership development at various levels of enterprise to really help the entire range of enterprises or institutions, because we have a vast array of them? So, to really cope up with these VUCA syndromes and really become agile and really give the true freedom. Our Independence Day is just round the corner. So maybe
Yeah.
this Independence Day, probably from this talk, the Prime Minister picks up that national mission for granting freedom to all the bottom of the pyramid. So I want your reflections on this, sir.
Yeah. No, so the way I see, Raghav, this issue progressing is that, you will, so this is how it happens in nature, right? Or this is what's happening in the business world today. The organizations that are not able to keep up, in terms of innovation, in terms of what is required for the future of that particular industry sector, etc., they will be taken out, and just about an hour ago, Sudhir and I were discussing that the number of companies that have gone out of business because they just could not keep up with the changes, right? Similarly, I think that it'll be the same thing with the leadership, right? The organizations or the leaders that are able to keep up with the pace, the leaders who are able to make the change that is required to survive in today's environment. And actually, survive is a negative term. I want to say take advantage of the possibilities and opportunities that this current environment offers. They will be put on the side, right? And and there are a number of leaders who will get affected by that. But then there are a number of young leaders who will come up. So you see a lot of these new startups, right? $1 billion market cap, right? And you have young leaders of these organizations, right? I mean, one of the examples that I give is that there is a very young startup in Singapore. It's founded and run by one of my very close friends. And he has a CTO, the chief technology officer of that company. He is a 23-year-old young engineer from India, okay? And and he's not from any of these IITs, etc. Okay, but he is an amazing fellow who's learning and growing, and he's taking over that role. I had an opportunity to interact with him for one of the other organizations that has needed some advice on, and I learned more in that 1 hour from this young man than I would have done, let's say, spent reading or surfing the internet. So things are changing. So the leadership is no longer about number of years of experience. I think it is more about the mindset, and it's about how easy you are able to adapt to the new changes. Yeah.
Sudhi, sir.
Lalit, Lalit, one question before we open up. Can leadership be taught? And that too, when we say something like leadership in crisis, can this really be taught?
I think it can be taught. Okay, so I mean, one needs to be a good student, right? And Sudhir, I think you and I have a number of conversations on this topic, right? People need to have that attitude of being able to learn and grow, and if you don't have that attitude, you'll never be able to do that, So can it be learned? Absolutely, it can be learned, right? And today's if there's one mantra, let me use the word mantra since I'm on this platform. One mantra that everybody needs to work on is to be curious and to be able to learn and grow. That's the only thing that will keep you in a healthy state in today's environment, or to help you to take advantage of these opportunities and possibilities that we're talking about. There is no other way. So lifelong learning and being curious is the only thing that can help you be in this scenario. So to answer your question, whether leadership can be learned, absolutely. I think one needs to be a good student, and all the great leaders, Sudhir, by the way, will tell you that they are still learning and growing, and that's always the case.
I would like to just add upon, because one of our central themes which we have put across is evoking self-awareness and somewhere civilizationally assured leadership. So in the Indian pantheon, if we go back, when the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole tale, 365 chapters, so it was all uttered by Shukdev to Parikshit. And it is said that Vedavyas, his father, who had actually written it, he sat down and listened it from Shukdev. So when you said that the CTO is 23-year-old, so that is the young Shukadev, and Lalit Gupta sir, the Vedavyas, the doyen of management, the Maharishi of management, having really put up his life. So he is listening and learning. So again, it is like a feedback loop that the doyens are teaching to the youngsters, and youngsters with their fresh outlook, without the baggage, they are finding out new mantras, and then they are revealing it back. So it's quite a cyclical learning mechanism. And as Sir has initiated, that leadership is all about learning. Now, this is a truly new paradigm, new focus, that ये नहीं हो सकता कि तुम जानते नहीं हो मैं 30 साल पुराना हूँ, you have to listen to me. So that I remember that when I went to Geeta Press Gorakhpur for my summer internship from IIT Kharagpur, and we said that this press has got fabulous material which can be repackaged and sold across a birthday package, a wedding package, because we all want to get connected with our culture. So the managing trustee out there was really very stern. Ki, aap hame bataoge, tum bacche ho. So anyways, that change was tough. But what you have said is, and as Sudhir sir said, that COVID has really put, now even the older lots, even in the families who said hame kuch nahi karna aata, they are all learning the new tech tools. They are becoming their own managers, and Sir has initiated in his last and inaugural session that he is a one-man manager. He is becoming an individual contributor to the larger team. So I think this conversation, as it is evolving, we are finding that somewhere or the other, what our Vedantic thoughts used to say, that in the larger cosmos, we are contributing our own self and things are taking charge of it. So probably somewhere or the other, because we have a bias towards the Indic pantheon and Indic paradigm. So that outlet, with the help of technology, if there would not have been a technology, we could not have granted freedom. So that self-awareness has really helped to re-anchor back into our civilizational assurance. The only thing is, as Sir rightly said, that you need really empowered leaders who can structure it across various segments and sectors so that chaos doesn't come in and orderliness remains. So over to Sudhir sir for the next leap of it. Some more mantras, some more areas he would like to explore with Sir Lalit Gupta. Yeah.
No, so for me, always talking to Lalit or listening to Lalit is fun, because every time he demystify one of my, uh, uh, challenging areas, or the, areas normally I'm struggling with. So Lalit, also, where do you see like today's generation is in hurry? If you see compared to we people when we were youngsters, today's generation is in hurry. Now, where do you see, the context of leadership with the younger generation?
So, I think it's a very tough environment that I think our younger generation has to deal with. I mean, most of us have been in the industry for like 30, 35 years, and we struggle with the changes that we are facing, right? And just imagine the kind of stress and anxiety that a youngster would face, when he or she is coming face to face with the kind of changes that we're talking about, right? But having said that, I have had the privilege to work with a lot of very smart and mature young people, and they have adapted to this new scenario, the new paradigm, and the new environment very well, because For us, it's a change. For them, that is the environment that they grew up in, right? For us to say that social media is distracting, it's useless, etc., it doesn't work, because it is there to stay, right? So the question is, how do you make the most out of it? So going back to what Raghav was saying about self-awareness, right? I think it was always important for people to try and figure out who am I and what I want in life, right? And it's a perennial question, and it is not something that one can answer in 1 hour or 1 day or 1 week, etc., etc. But one needs to consider spending time thinking about that on a regular basis, and for that one of the points that I earlier made about getting off the proverbial treadmill, taking that pause, taking a step back, it helps. And you'll be surprised how many young people are actually able to do that. For example, today, how many people are using yoga and meditation as a way to connect with themselves, right? It was a bit of a luxury maybe 10 years ago. I think today it is almost an essential part of your life. I mean, you need to find some quiet time for yourself on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. There is no other way out. Otherwise, you're just going to go bonkers in this current environment if you don't do that. So there are things that were important, but not as urgently required, let's say 5-10 years ago. But today they have to be part of your routine. Absolutely.
So one last question which comes to me, we are just coming to the close of this session, and you are 2.5 hours ahead of us, and it would be late night in Kuala Lumpur. Being self-aware is one thing, but then as we feel that there has to be a larger ecosystem of teaching and learning. So how is the management education per se in the business schools, or how the academia per se can incorporate this change management for the young learners? Because not everyone can be so poised. Everyone is getting so overwhelmed by the complexity, by the ambiguity which we are facing. So the kind of demeanor, by the kind of cool demeanor, you have just decomplicated the whole complexity and really given a very positive connotation of it all. It is very reassuring. It is not something some Armageddon is happening or some doomsday is coming to us. So how can the academicians at large, because they are the ones who have the mantle of progress, so how can they adopt it, and how can they structure it so that the young learners can really take it forward?
Right. So Raghav, I don't know whether Sudhir put you up to asking this question, because this is extremely close to my heart. Okay, the future of education, right? Because I think we've been talking about it for a long time, that the education system is broken, right? And it needs to change. And what's happening today, with Industrial Revolution 4.0, the kind of changes that we are seeing today, the kind of disruptions that we are seeing today, I think it will force a change to the education system, right? So when we talk about lifelong learning, right, we're talking about reskilling and upskilling of the workforce at a scale that we have never done before, right? If you look at the management training of most of the large organizations, it used to be more like a luxury, so it's like, if you have done well, let me reward you by doing a 1-week course in some, Harvard, etc., right? Whereas now it is becoming imperative. The reskilling and upskilling of workforce on a regular basis has to be done for them to stay relevant, for individuals to stay relevant, and for organizations to stay relevant, right? Now, what that means is that we need to be able to upgrade the skills in the micro education chunks, right? You can't afford to send people on 6-month program or 1-year program, etc. because even the 1-year programs will become obsolete at some point in time, right? So you need to see how can you, make it relevant. So for example, let's say if I'm a marketing manager in a company, right? And I need to learn something about digital marketing, right? Somebody should be able to pull together, let's say 10 hours of a program to upgrade my skills on digital marketing, right? Now, let's say 6 months from now, there could be a new technology, okay, in maybe some, search engine optimization, right? That I may need to learn on, right? Somebody should be able to pull together the 2-hour program for me to be able to upskill myself, right? Rather than having to do that 6-month program again, right? So this is the need of the industry.
Mhm.
So the academicians and the educational institutes, they will have to change as well, right? And I mean, that is one of the startups that I'm co-founder of, where the whole idea is to break education down into micro education elements.
Mhm.
And then learner can then pull together these elements together in any form or fashion which suits me. So for example, if I want to open a cafe,
Mhm. Mhm.
I probably need a little bit of training on customer service, a
Mhm.
bit of training on being a barista in terms of how to make a coffee, right? Little bit of accounting,
Mhm.
little bit of management. That's it. So somebody should be able to pull together 20 hours of program for me to be able to open a cafe, right? Or some 4 hours of export oriented program to teach how, let's say, some villager who's producing something, that who's exporting something to the world, can learn. So he doesn't need to go on an export degree or something, right? Somebody should be able to teach him what he needs to know about export, right? So that reskilling and upskilling is required.
Mhm.
That is what the industry needs or will need in the next 5-10 years time. And
Mhm.
that is how the education system will have to change to be able to provide that,
I think
those
Lalit sir
bite-sized
has,
upgrades.
yeah, yeah. I think Lalit sir has in fact touched upon the crux of Prime Minister's address on the World Youth Skills Day. And he was enumerating that when he asked his officers to list down the amount of skills required, so they listed down around 900. And he made a very specific distinction between skills and education. So, sir, my question would be, would you like to take upon the narrative a bit further? We will just close because it's getting very tempting to learn from you these mantras. So, are you somewhere suggesting that the formal education system, which had expanded with BTECs and MBAs, the large 4 years program, and that can be shrunken? So, what kind of a weighted average, what kind of a mix we are going to have? Because not everyone can go for a longer programs. You are saying if I want to become a open up a cafe, that's a need based thing. I don't need to go a 2 year MBA program to become open up a cafe over there.
Yep.
So how do you see it at the from the top level? The
Yep.
mix, the population mix, the
Yep.
need mix. Is it going to be applicable for the formal education also? To do away with the foundational 1st year program, 2nd year program, all the trimesters, foundational programs. So how do you see it?
Right. So let me give you my very personal view on this.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't believe that Harvard's or IITs or of the world are going to go away. Okay. I think those will still have a value, right? And people will still go there for whatever reason, right? So, but we are talking about probably the top 5 percentile of the population, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, I'm talking about the remaining 95 percentile of the population who are doing these 4-year degrees or 5-year degrees or 3-year degrees and absolutely wasting their time and wasting, national money, et cetera, right? They don't need to do that. So, so that's one side of the story. The other side of the story is, I think we have seen very clearly, right? People like Steve Jobs, right? Bill Gates, they didn't do their undergrad.
Mhm.
Okay, they're one of the most successful
Mhm.
technology leaders that you will ever see. Right now, they could be exceptions, so I'm not saying that. But in today's time, startups, they are looking for people who do a 4-month, intensive coding program with they call it, I think, hackathons.
Mhm.
If you have done that, they prefer a programmer out of that program to a Stanford graduate.
Mhm.
Okay, so it is already changing. right? So people are saying, I need the real skills. I need the skills that the industry needs, not what the, see today, when you have an engineer, even if let's say from one of these top institutes, right? And they join, let's say TCS or Infosys, etc. Infosys puts them through 6 months of their training, right? Why can't that 6 months be taught in the college, right? So the produce that the institutes are creating are not useful for the industry, right? So at some stage, this is going to come to a head-on collision, and there will be a change that will be required. So industry needs that change, and I think the educational institutes will have to respond. They have no option but to respond. Yeah.
I think what a bouquet of mantras we have got from Lalit sir this evening. And I think we have to really meditate upon for the entire week and really put to action in our daily lives. I would request Sudhir sir for his closing words to sum it up all. And it has been really, really, really educative and illumining. The micro educational system sir has talked about, it is truly terrific. And probably in one of the other sessions, maybe we would like to learn about the educational platform per se, because paradigm is fine, but to really code it across and create an ecosystem of micro skilling, because a lot of so how it really works, probably that might be for another session sometime. So over to Sudhir for the closing words. Thank you. Sudhir sir.
Yeah, Raghav.
Yeah, your closing words. You can sum up and let's closing words. Yeah, and parting.
Yeah. I think in today's time, as we are living, as we understand from Lalit, I think new mindset is very important. That we continue to reinvent ourselves, we continue to innovate ourselves, and we continue to unlearn and relearn. I think that is possibly the mantra which is very clearly coming from Lalit. And this is irrespective of which facets of life you are living and what is your age bracket. It is all independent of that, irrespective of that.
So thanks a lot for joining us, and Sudhir sir for really taking the mantle forward. Olympics is just around the corner. So Sudhir sir has taken up that Olympic flame of a hands-on practitioner, because last in his inaugural session, that staying relevant was his central mantra, which we are really, and Lalit sir has added upon it, that learning and growing, that is what is the essence of leadership. Thanks a lot, sir, for joining in and taking out time to share your mantras for all our welfare. We would, the entire audience, and wherever it goes, we will surely learn a bit of it and really come back to you with more questions and queries. So we'll close today's session over here. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you very much.